Okay, so let's start with meditation. Can you hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can. Great. Okay. So take your attention inside. And first, let's go all the way to the space below our bodies where our energy field touches the earth. Feel into that space and drop your attention between the breaths in that space. One of the purposes of meditation is to begin to experience yourself as pure spaciousness. All sensation eventually dissolves into spaciousness if we follow it between the breaths. And the energy centers are like knots or nadis. They're gatherings of energy that when we allow, pull our attention to them. So the most potent practice we can do is allowing. As this energy gathers in the lowest energy center, where our field meets the earth, gently allow your attention to rise to the tip of the tailbone. Breathe into that space between the breaths at the tip of the tailbone. As we worship, which is another word for putting our attention consciously on something, as we worship these energy centers, they will come alive for us. Feel into the space at the tip of your tailbone. Gently allow your attention to rise up to your sex chakra. Gently allow your attention to move upwards to just below your belly button. Breathe into the space between the breaths. And allow your attention to rest there. Allow your attention to rise to your heart center. Breathe into that space. Gently allow your attention to rise to your throat center. Breathe into the space between the breaths. Gently allow your attention to rise to your third eye. Breathe into the space between the breaths. Now take your attention to the vast flower at the top of your head, opening to the sun. Feel the pranic plasma raining down through your body, cleansing every cell of your body. And releasing that which no longer serves. And now take your attention to this space at the top of the aura where our fingertips would touch if we made a halo around our head. Take your attention there into the space between the breaths. As you're ready, gently bring your attention back so we can connect in this field. How may we serve today? Welcome. So happy to be with you. What an honor. Questions? Let me see where we left off last week. We were talking about healing to the original distortion. That's sort of been a theme for us this week as we've spoken to you and others. The healing to the first distortion is actually reaching back through time to heal ourselves and everyone that our multiple past lives have touched. And everyone in our lineage that we are connected to, most of whom we don't even know. But when we heal to the first distortion, we have no idea how big that healing is. But in our allowing, we can have confidence that asking for that to be healed is in the highest best for every being that we have ever connected to. This has to do with the fundamental logic of that which is beyond, which is that which is beyond love, peace, joy, and gratitude. It's also beyond the deepest negativity that we've ever experienced. Because the all of the all that is encompasses everything. The reason we tend to focus on the higher frequencies is because our lives will improve in a quantum way as we focused on being the best person we can be in every circumstance. And we kind of know what the alternative, where the alternative takes us, because we've all acted out of less than the highest lots of times in our lives for whatever reason.
There is a question.
Okay.
You mentioned something about astrological changes.
Well, astrological changes are happening every day, every moment of every day. Everything in the sky, as everything below, everything is alive. And it would seem that there is a consciousness to it all also. When we understand that consciousness itself transcends being human, life suddenly gets a lot bigger. It's not just our tiny bubble. and the tiny bubbles of our perception, but if we understand that most of consciousness is unseen, most of what is conscious and what is consciousness, and that our capacity to relate to most of what is unseen is also unseen. And that this is what we are cultivating in meditation, is we are expanding our awareness to experience greater and greater, let's say, frequencies of consciousness. And so when we think of planetary changes, everything in the sky is moving at different rates. The moon is in a different place every single day. And each planet has its own speed and programmed path through the sky that also changes every day. So how these forces influence us, you can think of them as rays of energy that are not, they're not blocked by anything. They come to us whether we're inside, outside, no matter where our attention is. And they have power. They influence our beings and our beingness. And so every day we could look at an astrological chart of the sky, and what we would see is different. So understanding that allows us to have a little bit of perspective about what we talk to ourselves about. Because what influences our state in any given moment is largely beyond our control. However, how we act and how we choose to view that state are completely within our control. So if we decide that we will act carefully in what we deem to be the highest best for ourselves and everyone else in every moment, then life becomes our laboratory, where we are attempting to behave with greater and greater conscious awareness in our interactions with everything that is. And then we notice things come up. Like, I don't know, for some reason, I ended up in a conversation about this twice this week, so maybe it's up for you guys too, but what do we do with insects in our environment? How do we view them? It's an interesting question. And so I'll tell you what we have encouraged Rebecca to do. And that is, insects outside need to be protected and allowed as much as possible and not disturbed. So if we do disturb them, it's for a conscious reason, like we're trying to create a garden so we can't have an anthill, things like that. But insects inside are a whole different matter. So what she does is she will speak to the insect and say, if I see you again, you're dead. You don't belong inside. So you have an opportunity to leave, but if I see you twice, you're gone. And then she follows through with that. Because insects don't belong inside. So it's simple. And if you kill an insect, you can wish it well. Highest best in your next incarnation or wherever it is you go. Highest best. So we wish everything well because we understand that our wish has power. And having made decisions like this, it makes it simple. It's not a complex question that we have to engage every time we see an insect. And we're willing to revise our opinion and decision as more information comes. So it's not that that's a set in stone rule, but for now it seems to work pretty well. They have their space, we have our space, and fine. How may we serve this morning? Andrew? Seems to be one of those mornings where we'd all like to just be in heaven and maybe not talk too much.
Well,
Yes.
it's solstice this evening. And so it's just I don't know the significance of it, but it's a marker of the passage of time. And so
It's true. Paul just pointed out that it's solstice, and that solstice is an important moment in our year because it's when the day and the night are the same length. Oh no, it's the longest day. Sorry, got it backwards. It's the longest day. It's the equinox that is equal, and the solstice is long or short. So we're in the longest day.
it just makes me think of the passage of time and space.
Well, there is a spaciousness as we feel into the day. If you remember how it feels at the opposite end of the year, this is very, very spacious and expansive, and that is very contracted and dark. There's also a huge heat wave in our country. We're not feeling it so much here in Portland, but maybe you are where you are. Well, it's interesting. The moon today is in the nakshatra of Swati. And Swati is about scattering. So it may be that there's a scattered quality to the day. Clearly, that's where Rebecca's mind is, not really holding to anything in particular.
Jupiter going retrograde today.
Jupiter is going retrograde today, but it's in Cancer where it's exalted, if I remember from looking this morning. So what happens to Jupiter when it goes retrograde is it just becomes less conventional. It still benefits everything it touches. Jupiter always does good. Venus always does good. Moon always does good. Mercury, for the most part, always does good, but it gets influenced by malefics if they're close by or aspecting. But the beneficial planets always bring benefit no matter what. It just may be influenced to be more or less by what happens to be walking past in the moment. The quiet is pretty big today. The Om sound is fairly loud.
Good morning, Becky. It's Margaret.
Good morning, Margaret. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
That's
I
good.
have a question for you. People talk a lot about Mercury retrograde and communication difficulties, and I haven't ever put all that much weight on that in general. Yet for myself, I've often struggled with communication throughout my life, starting with my childhood where my opinions weren't valued, and I wasn't encouraged to say how I felt. And that comes up for me in relationship. And so I wanted to ask you for your thoughts on, there's the old saying of, if you love something, set it free. If it's meant to be, it'll come back. Is there really truth to that? And how do we know when? Because you were talking about honoring the highest and best for yourself and for the other person you're communicating with. So how can you make sure that you are saying what you need to say? I have a tendency, I don't know if it's because empaths do this, but I have a tendency to fast forward to every scenario that could happen if I said what I wanted to say and take responsibility for all of those scenarios instead of just saying what I need to say and being in alignment with my highest. Do you have anything that you could say about that?
Well, yes. A few things. If you're having a very serious conversation that will be life-changing to both of you, then wait till Mercury is no longer retrograde, because you want to have the best possibility to both understand yourself, your own communication with yourself, which also gets disrupted sometimes in Mercury retrograde, and your communication with the other person. So you can wait a few days and you'll know, because there'll be sort of a green light in you. Now there's some kind of, every time I try to engage this, it's not exactly right feeling. And so you wait for that to pass. You just sit with the discomfort of that feeling and allow yourself to wait for clarity. And that may have to do with Mercury going direct, but it may be deeper. It may have to do with a different part of yourself that you're not exactly clear about what it is you want to create with this person. Just because you don't want to be romantically involved with someone doesn't mean that there's no connection and that there's not value in the connection. Like, you may want to have a friendship, and people often say that to each other when they realize that they don't want to have the deepest connection, but they say it as a way of getting out of everything, of sort of cutting the connection. And so it's very important that you figure out what you really want, not just what you don't want as you engage relationships. Because there's some people that, it doesn't really fit in your life at all. There's no place for this person. It's not the right thing. And so, that's where we usually say, oh, I just want to be friends, but we don't really mean it. And so, it's important to, yes, you want to think about the feelings of the other person, but you really want to be clear about your own. That there's no room for this person in my life. And then the flavor of how you interact will be very different from, oh, I really like this person, and, getting together with them for dinner once a month or once every 2 months would still be a really valuable thing in my life. And then what to say and how you say it is very different from, if this person really doesn't fit, they're not what I'm looking for. That's very different from, this person is really a wonderful person and I like them. I just don't want to live with them. So you can think through for yourself whether there's still some possibility of creativity in this realm with this person, even though it may not be the ideal thing. And until you have clarity that kind of goes through your whole being about where you stand in this relationship, and that, there's nothing that says you have to talk today or tomorrow. And you can always put things off if you're not clear. And it's always okay to say to yourself, I don't know yet. Is that helpful?
Somewhat. It's kind of a little bit the opposite situation where there's somebody I don't know very well, but want to say something that I'm not sure is the right time to say it. But so I'm second guessing myself.
Yeah, if you're just wanting to get to know somebody better, just make space in yourself. You don't have to say anything.
So that saying, there is some validity to the saying of, if you let something go and it's meant to be, it will somehow come back?
Well,
that?
not necessarily. I mean, you may have to make some effort.
That's my question. I mean, does it really come back to you if it's really meant to be, or do you have to say, well, how you're feeling? You know, I guess that's my real question. At the risk of being completely vulnerable and
There's a place in between
okay.
where you can be slightly more available without showing all your cards, because you don't have enough cards to show yet.
Right.
So you can say that I like what I see, but I haven't seen enough. You know, you can say that inside yourself before you try to find the words for the other person.
So when the thing that really trips me up is I can't figure out if I'm just uncomfortable saying it or I shouldn't say it. So that I guess is my real question. So when I worry more about how that will change this, what I say will change the situation for the other person instead of saying it because it's in alignment with what I need to say. I don't know if I'm making sense at all.
Well, the place that it doesn't make sense is the place where your confidence dissipates. Because what we're really hearing you say is that I'm not sure that what I feel is the truth for me. And so how this person reacts to how I feel, how I express myself is really important. It's more important than how I feel in this moment. So do you see where the confidence line is? The confidence is maybe you're not sure how you feel, or maybe you're not quite ready to own how you feel. Those are two very different things. And so if you're not sure how you feel, then the person's response is valuable information. If you're sure of how you feel, then the person's response is just their response, and your feeling won't change exactly. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm. It does.
So there's more than a communication issue, it's a confidence issue, we would say. That you don't quite trust your feeling is accurate. And that
Yes.
may mean you need more information. Could be just as simple as that. Or you don't trust your feeling, which is a little bit different.
I think it's a little of both.
So that's helpful to you, because the place where you don't trust your feeling is an interesting place to look for you, to just say, what is it that I don't trust about this? You know, where is it that I don't trust myself? Is it that I don't have enough information, or that, you know, there's something faulty about my perception? And it's not a one-time thing looking here. It's kind of a thing over time to get deeper with yourself about what's real and what your real feeling about your own perception, and you know what it is that you clearly desire and how this person fits into that. And maybe you don't know the answer to that question. And if that's the truth, then you need more information. And so is this getting closer?
Yes.
Is it bringing up another question?
I guess the question that always comes back for me is Why am I more concerned with somebody else's reaction than my own feelings?
Ah, you hit the nail on the head. That's the question to ask yourself. And that's what we're getting at with confidence. And there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. You know, confidence is knowing who you are and what you want and where your tolerances are. And, you know, the great thing about spiritual work, about any work, any inner work, is that we are actively engaging in knowing ourselves better. And so there's no hesitation about seeing something that's incomplete within our own growth. That's what we're looking for when we look inside. We're looking for the parts of us that are not yet completely authentic to us, that we don't completely see to the bottom of the pond. You know, that we haven't grown into in ourselves. And so it's a great gift to recognize a place like that inside us, because that's where we can direct our intention and get to know ourselves better. And, you know, examine why we feel that way. Although the why can often lead us all kinds of places that aren't really valuable. The what is more important, but the what often can't be seen. And so, you know, it just gets bigger. And most of us have faulty memory of our past. All of us do. We reinvent things as we go along, and they get further and further from the truth of what actually happened, but they don't get further and further from the truth of our own perspective. And so we can go deeper into our perspective, knowing that it's not particularly based in truth, it's based in our perspective. But knowing that is valuable. And the thing to stay away from inside ourselves is self-judgment. You know, just because we notice a place where we don't feel completely grown up in ourselves, we'll use that word for lack of another. I mean, in ourselves, we call it a kind of immaturity. Like, you know, for Rebecca, it's like, is she being the best channel she can be in this moment? Is she really mature in that evolution, mature enough to be even having this conversation? So that will be going through her sometimes. And so that's a place of inner evolution that gets regular attention. And we all have places like that that don't feel like they've completely come to fruition. And so one of the reasons that whatever it is that's up for us is because of that. We have called it into the field of our awareness so that we can understand it deeper within ourselves as we move forward in our self-understanding of our own conscious awareness and our interactions with others. And so every part of our being and how we relate to what we are transmitting and what we are receiving can be engaged in expanding our awareness of who and what we are. And so we love this line of questioning because that's what you're doing. And it kind of feels endless, but it's not. It's really not. The more we do this in ourselves, the more we come to know who and what we are and what our true purpose is here. So we're actually exploring our blueprint when we look in this way. And so we applaud it. And, you know, there is no failure, there is only learning. And just because one conversation doesn't go a certain way, you know, people are pretty forgiving. Redos are allowed. So we don't have to feel like every word is terminal. Because then things get too heavy, and who wants that? Yeah, exactly. What else? Did that cover it?
Yes, that's exactly what I do. I get a ball in my head and it gets way too heavy and then I just don't say it. Yep.
So give yourself a hug and start over.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Not Margaret.
Paul says you're not alone.
Thank you.
How may we serve further? Andrew.
Can you speak a bit about in one's relationship to angelic guides or protectors or energetic beings that are, to what a degree is awareness of them important, not only in general, but from day to day, and also because of the either the lack of perception or the dramas in one's life or self-doubt, you know, feeling that their help is this or paying homage, you know, all these things. I don't know how much to concern oneself about that.
So Andrew's question is as we go along and cultivate relationships with angelic beings, become aware of relationships with, let's say, consciousness in other forms than human. We'll just say it like that. Because one of the things that Rebecca is discovering as she studies astrology and has begun to, in a way, worship the astral bodies with her attention, which is why we sort of began the morning with the idea that our attention on something is worship. And that when we focus our attention on anything, we are worshiping that. And when we use language in that way, then our life becomes more tuned to being sacred. Let's put it that way. And the interesting experience that she's having repeatedly now, enough to be willing to share it, is that the planets, the sun, the moon, Rahu, Ketu, and the planets, they all are conscious awareness And when we worship them, they respond. And the reason we know that they respond is because what comes back has nothing to do with any expectation on our part. And so it will come in the form of dreams, energetic experience, and even the experience of it's like an astral body turning to face and energetically responding. That's the way the experience feels. And so in coming to this understanding, it's brought us to the conclusion that many things in our field of perception have conscious awareness that we are capable of communicating and interacting with if we want. Certainly this can happen in nature. That's what shamanic experience is all about, is cultivating relationships with nature. And then expanding that. To cultivating communication with various frequencies. But it's interesting because the whole study of astrology has come just from the desire to know oneself. Throughout time. And to understand the influences on a human being. That's what astrology is. Does that answer your question?
Well, partly, but that's in terms of something very concrete where you know the vibration and the name. But so many, what you're talking about, I don't even know. I don't know. I mean, in other words, or I've had experiences like I think that my life was saved or something, and I don't know who
Right.
did it. So the
Right.
thing is, then how do you know, is it my attention to the energy, and is that what's important, or is it,
What's important is to be grateful to everything. Cultivating gratitude. And so what we're really going to say is what's important is intention. So the question is this: when things happen that are outside of our conscious awareness, but we just have a feeling like something just saved our life, or something just protected us, or some form, came through us and cleared something in another human being. This happens to you quite regularly. So how do you relate, having had that experience, how do you relate to the frequency that provided that experience? So intention is everything. First of all, when you are, that's becoming a channel, right? For another energy to come through you that you couldn't on your own. On your own, with your own intention, what would have happened would have been less than what happened because some frequency came through you and provided a boost to whatever your intention was. Is that your experience.
Right, and does that, I guess it's weird, it's almost, does that create a contract with that energy? So that
Allowing
in
and
gratitude, but not actually cultivating otherwise, is there something,
so it,
how can you screw this up, I guess is what I'm asking.
right. So it seems like your question is, when an energy comes through you, does that create a contract between you and the energy or the source of that energy? Hmm. So you're asking, does Rebecca have a contract with Annassa? That's another way of asking that question. The contract is this: as long as her attention is on allowing Annassa comes through. When her attention is somewhere else, Annassa doesn't come through. It's as simple as that. So she's asking us if we have a willful intention. Our intention is to bring through the highest for every person who is in touch with the frequencies that we make available. They come through Rebecca because in this moment she is willing and able. Do we control her? Absolutely not. Although her frequency can be felt by every cell of her body in this moment, our frequency can be felt. There is a union, but that union is no way overriding her highest best interest. As a matter of fact, it is completely in alignment with that highest best interest and the highest best interest of every person participating in this communication. There is a contract of the moment, and that contract is alignment. And the harmony of that alignment is vast. So we're sharing that with you in this moment. Because the harmony of that alignment makes available to you energies that you might not otherwise have access to in this moment. There is no limit to what you can have access to ultimately. That limit has to do with your own awareness and the depth of your accessibility to the highest and finest available to a human being. And the deeper you clear out the disharmonious energies within you, the more available you become to harmonize with frequencies to your and everybody else's highest benefit. This is how it works. It's not a legal contract. There is nothing binding. If Rebecca decided after this call that she didn't want to communicate with us anymore, that would be fine. There would be no foul, no harm, no nothing. We would go, it's not exactly that we go anywhere.
I've found that sometimes these energies have helped me out of, say, something like depression. But when I'm depressed, first thing that goes is the ability to align.
Exactly, because once your frequency, so what he's saying is that in his experience, when he's depressed, the first thing that goes is the capacity to align. And this is the truth. This is also true for Rebecca. If her frequency drops below a certain level, then communication with us is impossible. And so actually, in many ways, when she needs us the most, we are the least available to her. And that's true for every human being relating to higher and finer energies, that as our own frequency goes out of range, as Rebecca's frequency drops out of our range, then she can no longer access us. That's the first thing that goes. And so it's very important that each of us, this is Rebecca speaking, it's very important that each of us learn to cultivate our own energy to pull ourselves out of disharmony. This is why we use Ho'oponopono, so that we can establish ourselves back into harmony fairly quickly when these disconnects happen. And the more proficient we get at Ho'oponopono, the more proficient we get at reconnecting to our own access to the highest that is available to us. So we just noticed the time, and we're realizing that we want to transmit further to you before we finish today. Are we seeing the time correctly? Okay, going to look a little bit deeper
About
here.
a quarter after.
Oh, okay, we have another 5 minutes, so let's not abort too soon. I'm misreading the time because those numbers are really tiny to me with the bright lights. So where were we? We were talking about Ho'oponopono and reconnecting to the highest. So when you notice that you've fallen out of the frequency that allows you to contact your own highest, then Ho'oponopono is the best thing you can do. Does that help?
Yeah, and yes, and I think that I've had experiences where I've been depressed and that some sort of divine intervention causes some synchronicity or something to happen, which wakes me up enough to do that work you're talking about. But it sounds like the idea of like, I'm, can't get out of bed, but got to do my Ho'oponopono. It doesn't necessarily
Right.
follow.
When you're depressed, Ho'oponopono is not the first thing you want to do. The first thing you want to do is escape your depression in whatever way possible. That's true for all of us. It's true for all of us. And we use all kinds of things, drugs, alcohol, food, exercise. We use anything to try to change the channel when we're in pain. And Ho'oponopono very often takes us directly into our pain, which is the last place we think we want to go when we're already in pain, right?
But I would say that it's almost unable to go. It's not really like.
Yes,
no
it's not
need.
like you have a
It's, know,
choice.
or it gets judgmental. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? So.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that the angels or for whatever.
There's
reason,
divine
are
intervention.
there to give just enough of a spark so that I can find the thread.
So what he's saying is that sometimes, maybe even often, when he's depressed, and do you mind if we say that that's been a common experience for you in your life? And for many, many years, getting out of it was very difficult. And we share that. But his experience now is that sometimes when he's depressed, it's as though there is a divine intervention that makes it possible for him to work his way out of it. Like some spark will come and make it possible for him to do Ho'oponopono, or to at least get his body moving so that there's some sense of flow, and then, you know, some endorphins kick in, who knows what, and things can change. So yes, as our inner work gains momentum, we naturally attract to us those forces which cause it to maintain and even gain more momentum. An example of that is your presence on this call. You would not be here if you were not already engaged in cultivating higher and finer within yourself. And so you are attracted to a field of energy which can make that higher and finer more available to you in a more intense form than you have previously been able to experience. Does that make sense? And yes, we are validating those experiences. We all have help. Each one of us has at least one or two guardian angels that are waiting for us to ask. But what you're talking about happens without asking, or the inner asking is maybe not so much a part of our awareness. You know, it just happens. And that happens from the cultivation of the field. You've been meditating for over 30 years. Meditation is a part of your, it's a part of your day. It's a part of your being. It's a part of your way of interacting both with yourself and the highest. And this is what we're cultivating. And as we cultivate that, our alignment with our blueprint gets clearer and clearer. And as we are more and more aligned with our own blueprint, then the flow between us and the forces that compel us to continue on our self-discovery get more and more powerful. And they gather a certain momentum that kind of keeps us on the trail. That is what you're experiencing. Does that make sense? So now it is time for meditation. And we hope you'll join us. This will be an open eye meditation. So we'll encourage you to do something similar to what we started out with, which is feeling into each energy center in the space between the breaths, allowing that energy center to expand, gather its energy, and gradually move up through our energetic being. And while doing that, we will bring through a transmission of our energy. So here we go. It's been such a pleasure to be with you this morning. Thank you so much. Hmm. Thank you so much for being here today. This has really been so much fun. So much love to you all. Till next time.